Hey everyone, welcome back to John's Watch. Today I'm taking a look at a new game called Kristala. This game was released on Steam in Early Access on June 6, 2024. Its regular price is $38.99 Canadian, or regional equivalent, and it's developed and published by Astral Clock Tower Studios. This is, probably as the title suggests somewhat, a Souls-like where you play as a cat person. Right at the start of the game, there's a very funny Khajiit Elder Scrolls cat joke. They just say, one of the characters says like, oh, you're from somewhere, or maybe elsewhere, and elsewhere is where the Khajiit come from in Elder Scrolls. Very funny, I quite like that. So the Steam description says, as a feral warrior blessed with the gift of Kristala, you must master the 6 magic specialties of the sacred crystals to join ranks with the famed Araxaka warriors. Simultaneously, you must uncover the source of a terrible curse that has transformed planet Isler's creatures into mutated monsters. So this is a Souls-like I said. It's currently in early access. It is very, very early access. I'm recording this video on June 14th, so it's been out for 8 days at the time of recording. It's had a couple of minor updates. The last update at the time of recording was June 13th. With some more bug fixes and very slight performance improvements. We'll talk about performance at some point, but it's very early access. They're very actively working on it. I think you can tell this is quite a passion project, and it's super, super promising. But the long and short of it is, it's very, very promising, but it's so early access that I wouldn't suggest playing it right now. It's very good to pick up now if you want to be involved with the development. If you want to give feedback, you can give feedback right from in the game. You can report bugs right from in the game, which is very, very useful. But if you're looking for a Souls-like where you play as a cat, and you're looking for a feature-complete, polished game, do not pick up Kristala yet. Keep an eye on it. Wait for it to finish up early access. So the developers note on the Steam page that they expect to be in early access for approximately 18 months. That seems quite ambitious to me. We'll see how that goes. But they said that the structure of early access they want to go for, the roadmap for early access, is to release the game in an episodic format. Basically, the early access version right now in June 2024 is episode 1. There's going to be 7 episodes altogether, I believe, and they said, that they haven't put an exact time frame for each episode specifically, but they said the next 6 episodes will be gradually released over the course of the next 18 months. They also say that each full episode will include 4 to 12 hours of gameplay, depending on your experience with the ARPG, Souls-like genre, and overall interaction with side quests. So at the time of recording, I've literally just finished up episode 1. On screen now, you'll see I beat the second boss of the game so far, and it said you've completed episode 1, and my quest log updated to say that my adventures will continue in episode 2. I did not play for 4 to 12 hours. It only took me 3.1 hours to finish up episode 1. Obviously, I'm very, very familiar with the ARPG Souls-like genre, and also I did not fully engage with the side quests, so I think if I had engaged with the side quests a little bit more, I probably would have got to just about that 4-hour mark. But I think just because I am very familiar with Souls-like games, I would definitely be on the low end of that expected playtime. So you start the game by making your cat person. You choose between 2 body types, 2 voice types, loads of different choices for your fur color, which is quite nice. Really lets you kind of customize your cat, which is quite fun. It was nice making a cat. Funnily enough, I designed my cat, and then I named it after my sister's cat, but I completely forgot to actually design it after my sister's cat, so it's only got the name of her cat, but it's not even her real name. Then you also choose your starting class, your starting clan, which affects the spells you have access to, and then also your starting class. When I played, there were only 4 class choices. There was a Knight, Battle Mage, Assassin, and Spellblade. Knight and Battle Mage seem kind of similar to each other, and so do Assassin and Spellblade. But already you can probably see that the magic is quite a focus of this game. Both Battle Mage and Spellblade, definitely imply a use of magic. So I went for a Spellblade, just sounded kind of cool, and the armor looked really cool. You then go through a fairly lengthy tutorial where it teaches you all the systems of the game. You also get to unlock your first spell of the game. There's a pretty decent little spell tree. I went for like a bleed build, so the first spell I unlocked was I shoot out like a spurt of blood in front of me, and it builds up bleed on my opponents. And then later on, I went for basically like Blood Flame Blade from Elden Ring. It just coats my sword with blood magic, and I also build up bleed when I'm attacking. So really nice that, you know, right from the start, basically, I had two spells I picked, and they both complemented each other and let me, you know, start working on a bleed build, which was cool. Bleed definitely doesn't seem as strong as other games. Instead of doing a big chunk of damage like it does in Elden Ring, when you build up bleed on opponents, which for me was usually I would just hit an enemy twice and they would be bleeding, it just does a damage over time, which is still very good, especially for bosses. There's pretty decent movement in this game. You're able to jump, you're able to kind of wall jump, you're able to sprint, you're able to sneak, you're able to run. Yeah, but very decent movement. You're also able to equip a primary and secondary weapon. For me, primary was my like assassin-y claws that I started with, and then I was given a sword and shield a bit later, and just my sword just did so much more damage than my claws, so I just never used the claws after that. And also, parrying is fairly important in this game, so it was important for me to have a shield out at all times. There's a posture system like Sekiro, so you want to parry enemies, which deals damage to their posture, and when you've broken their posture, you can do an instant kill, or at least a ton of damage to them. You know, you'll know what the system is if you know Sekiro. Something I noticed about the parrying system, though, is whereas in Sekiro, you're able to, or you're kind of meant to chain parry after parry after parry kind of thing and learn the pattern. In Kristala, I didn't seem to be able to do that. I would, you know, parry the first attack, the enemy would not be bothered by me parrying it, and they would instantly follow up with their second attack, and I just wouldn't be able to parry the second attack. You know, I was kind of only able to parry one of every 4 attacks, so it definitely didn't feel as good to parry as obviously it does in Sekiro. But I guess maybe you're supposed to do more of a combination of dodging and parrying instead of just relying on one or the other. After all that, you know, I don't have a ton to say about the gameplay. It is a Souls-like. You probably know Souls-like games from watching videos on this channel. It's all kind of there in this game. You know, it does mix a little bit of Elden Ring with the jumping and the sneaking, a little bit of Sekiro with the parrying and also the sneaking. And then your inventory and your equipment and everything like that is very Dark Souls. So yeah, movement feels pretty good, honestly. It feels decent to move. It's, you know, pretty much everything in it is a little bit janky. But the movement is pretty good. They do have the movement down pretty well. Combat also feels pretty good outside of how I mentioned that, you know, you weren't able to parry in quick succession. But if you're not relying on parrying, your dodging's mostly good. If you're fighting multiple enemies, it's surprisingly easy to get like completely stun locked. So that's not the best. Again, super early in early access, so it will be improved, I'm sure. Enemy AI is also very, very basic, and I would say probably quite bad. Because you've got a jump button, you occasionally have to do parkour. And the parkour usually involves jumping over like pools of water, like wall jumping over water and stuff like that. And if you fall in water like that, you'll basically take, I think it's like a quarter of your health of damage, and you'll respawn somewhat fairly close to the water. I seem to spawn in like very different places sometimes. But yeah, you can't go in water that's any higher than your head. You just drown and appear back on land, like I said. Enemies do not die when they fall into these water traps. You can very, very easily kite enemies to the edge of these water traps, hop across the gap, and you don't have to do anything particular. They literally just walk off the edge into the water. And not only do they walk off the edge into the water and kill themselves, they don't actually kill themselves. They literally just stay alive under the surface of the water. Got some really horrifying bits later on. There's a one of the levels is you're in this huge maze. It was fucking miserable. But it's just like full of spiders, and occasionally I would have spiders fall into the water and they'd be trapped under there, and I could just hear them skittering and splashing around in the water for ages afterwards. It was horrible. Like I mentioned earlier, there are 2 boss fights in the game right now. The first boss, I think I killed them on my fourth try, something like that. And then second boss, I killed my first try. I don't think I was like that much stronger, so I didn't really know what stats I was meant to be putting up. I just kind of YOLO'd it, and I think it worked out. But the first boss, I was doing like the parrying and stuff, and it just wasn't going that well. And so eventually I switched to just using my blood spell, and found that almost trivialized the boss. I still had to dodge around and stuff, but it made it a lot easier. And then the second boss, I did the same thing right from the start, and again, it made that boss pretty easy, which is how I was able to kill the second boss first try. Now, I've got to talk about the UI next, I think. Graphics-wise, I think the game looks pretty decent. It's got quite a cohesive art style. You're this cat in this fantasy world. Lots of forests and flowers and plants and stuff like that. Looks nice. The UI, the menu UI and like your inventory and your equipment screen don't look great. I really hope that gets kind of massively overhauled. I think like your actual HUD, your in-game HUD, looks pretty decent apart from the quest log. Although I did find that because the HUD was kind of like reversed of Dark Souls, where Dark Souls your health's in the top left, boss health is in the bottom middle. In Kristala, as you can see on the screen, your health's in the bottom left instead of top left, and the boss health bar is in the top middle instead of bottom middle. I don't know, it just kind of really threw me off. I don't know if people who don't have a ton of time in Dark Souls would also find that it throws them off, but it definitely did for me. But yeah, like the menus and stuff really are not great. They're okay. You know, they're serviceable for very, very early access, but I do hope they get improved as early access goes on. The worst part about the UI, though, has got to be the quest log. When I played, and at the time of recording, there's no way to actually view your quest log in a menu or anything, or to abandon a quest or anything like that. Which is very annoying because, as I mentioned earlier, I did not interact with all the side quests fully. So, by the end of my playtime, a good quarter of my screen was filled with all these quests that I wasn't going to finish, and that I was nowhere near being able to finish. But I couldn't dismiss them or anything like that. They covered up boss health bars. They covered up items I picked up. I'm not too worried about that because I'm sure you're going to be able to access your quest log in-game at some point. But I kind of would have expected that to be implemented in the game, at least a way to clear some of the crap off your screen, because it takes up a lot of real estate on your screen. The game's, fairly buggy, kind of to be expected for early access. In the maze level, again, the maze was awful. I think I probably spent like a good hour of my playtime was just in the maze. It was just miserable trying to get through it. Like, it was huge. It was absolutely massive. But in the maze, you would regularly find rooms with like 2 of these like plant creatures and 1 big spider. But a couple of the rooms, the spider wouldn't spawn until you were right next to where it spawned. So a couple of times I would walk into the room, I think I would just try and run through it, and on my way out, a spider would literally spawn right next to me. And as someone with, you know, fairly mild, but still some degree of arachnophobia, did not like that at all, just having a big spider appear right in my screen. Definitely made me jump and, you know, gave me, you know, kind of chills, so that was not fun. And that's very buggy. Like, enemies should not spawn right on top of you. That needs to be fixed. I already mentioned the enemies getting stuck under the water. You know, that's another bug that's not great and makes for some really weird sounds in game. There was also an NPC who, one time when I went into his house, he was floating like 1.5 feet above the ground. And like every time I went back to him, he was always floating. And then I must have like progressed part of his quest, because I went back and this time he was half stuck in the ground. There was another time when an enemy was stuck in the ground. And it did kill me, because I literally couldn't lock onto him and I couldn't attack him unless I was positioned properly, so I died to him. You know, somewhat minor bugs, very, very early access. They'll be fixed. I'm not worried about things like that. I just kind of wanted to mention them so you get an idea of what state the game's in right now. Performance it's okay. I couldn't get it too far above 60, 70 FPS. I had it unlocked, but it wouldn't go that high. Again, you know, tweaking all kinds of settings didn't seem to do anything for the performance. DLSS didn't seem to do anything at all. My frame rate would literally not change between having DLSS off and having it on like ultra performance. I don't know if it's just not properly implemented yet, because it just does not seem to be working at all. There was one area in like the starting town that really, really dropped frames. But after that, didn't seem to be as bad. I do also think the patch the day before I'm recording this video improved performance a little bit. You know, whatever I played after that patch seemed to be pretty good. You can mostly rebind controls, which is good. By default, the controls are like decently close to Dark Souls, so I didn't have to rebind too much. I tweaked things to get them a little bit closer to my Elden Ring preferences, and they mostly worked okay. Like, I changed jump to Y and interact to A, because that's how I have it in Elden Ring. And I have hundreds of hours in Elden Ring, so I've got that muscle memory. And it worked, but every interact prompt in the world it still showed me Y, so I just had to know to press A instead of Y, which wasn't a big deal, but again, just a little bit of polish needs to be done there. This is maybe also like a performance thing, maybe it's done for performance reasons, but basically the world had to like fully reload every time you loaded into it. So like if you die and have to spawn back at your bonfire, you can see the world load in from nothing right in front of your eyes. So I, you know, hopefully that gets polished further down. Like when you die and respawn in Dark Souls, you're not seeing all the textures pop in front of you. So hopefully that gets fixed. But yeah, I think that'll do it for my video on Kristala. Like I said, I think it's very, very promising, but unless you really, really want to get involved with the game right now, I would probably hold off for it to probably finish early access at this point, unless you're absolutely desperate to play even a game that's 3/4 done. I think you'd probably rather wait for it to be fully done, which should only be about 1.5 years away apparently, but I guess we'll see about that. And also know that there's not a ton of gameplay or playtime in it right now. They said 4 to 12 hours. You know, I'm done with it after 3.1 hours. But I guess your mileage will vary with that as well. You also have the option to make new characters, I guess. You know, you could try out the four different classes, different spell builds. There's replayability if you want. But yeah, I'm personally going to leave this until it's done early access, and then I'll check it out again, I think. There you go, that was a look at the early access version of Kristala. Thank you guys very much for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!